Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Saucy Artel. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerer's Guild. Today on Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, we are going to be discussing the essay entitled Best Use for Eggs and Eggshells. Now, this is of course the first group essay in this particular volume, and so I feel that we should list off everyone that was included in the making of the essay. Now, in the last group essays of the first book, I actually went ahead and paraphrased everything that people said into an essay. This time, instead of doing that, I included everyone's full answers. And we're not going to read off all those answers, but I am going to read off everyone that contributed. So, in this case, again, the question was, best use for eggs and or eggshells. And the people that contributed are Craig Lechner. If I get any of these, the pronunciation of any of these names wrong, please excuse me. The next is AJ Adulik II, Summer Rain, Yvonne Undine, myself, S.R. Blakely, Gypsy Rose Page, and Melanie Minshew. Now, if you would like to follow along and read those answers, there will be a link to a Google Docs copy in the description portion of the post, as well as a link to Amazon, where you can purchase a copy of the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, should you so choose. Okay, now, like I said, this essay was on how to use eggs and or eggshells, and so we're going to do a few demonstrations on some of my favorite uses for eggs in magical practices. One of the most common and most used is Cascarilla. Now, not every Cascarilla recipe will start with boiling the eggs, but it makes them more sanitary in case you use them for anything that you're going to be ingesting or anything like that, because they are technically edible, but again, there's all the egg on there. You need to boil any of that off if it's going to be anything like that, and it just makes the membranes easier to get off. So, I recommend boiling your eggshells first. And then you want to strain them nicely. There, of course, need to cool down and drain for a while. So we're going to sit those off to the side, and we will come back to the Cascarilla and its many uses here in a bit. Let me go ahead and get this out of our way. Okay, so like I said, we'll come back to that one. Now, one of the things that I have discussed in Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 1 and several times in the guild and on the channel is purification and cleansing. And I have talked about this one before, but this is an egg cleanse. Now, the egg cleanse is something where you take the potential life force within the egg and use that as a draw or a sink to pull away any negative energy from yourself. And what you want to do is take the egg and roll it all over your body. You want to get your legs, your arms, everywhere you can. Especially you want to get your feet, because that's one people forget a lot, the bottoms of the feet. And what you're doing is pulling away any links that aren't supposed to be there, any attachments, any parasites, anything that might be connected to you that is not part of you. And you pull it away from the life force that is you and into the life force in the egg. Now, it doesn't matter whether the egg is fertilized or not. That would matter for some of the things that people do with eggs, but for this particular thing, that does not matter. Just roll it around, make sure that you pull it everywhere, pull out all the energy that could be connected to you that is not yours. Make sure you get your head, make sure you hit all your chakras. Just get all of you, the best that you can. And then, after that, you just take the egg, and what you will do is crack it into water. Now, the first part, technically, is all you really need to do the purification part. This next part is a kind of divination to tell you if things that were connected to you, if there's any curses that are going on or anything like that. And so to do that, you crack the egg and drop it in the water. Now, Fortunately for me, there doesn't seem to be any real discrepancies here. It's just a basic egg, a little bit of bubbles on top. There's no blood, there's no strange cracks or anything. A little bit of cloudiness that is forming as the egg is sitting in the water for a bit there, which means it's probably a good idea for purification, but no big deal. No major curses. Now if you found blood spots or anything like that, that would be a big deal. If you got a double yolk, that can be concerning depending on how it looks. If they're both even, it could be a good thing that you have extra energy, but if one of them is smaller than the other, that is indicating that some part of you is being neglected or being drained away, and another part is perhaps being maybe overinflated. There's lots of ways that can be interpreted. That is up for interpretation, essentially, when you're looking at it, because it's going to be how it resonates within your mind and your understanding. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about then is how to create vessels. And a vessel for an egg can be done in a few different ways, some of which you leave the egg whole, like this egg here, which we're going to be demonstrating how to hollow out in just a second. But for a lot of these, what you want is a hollow egg. You want to remove the potential energy that was in there and have something that now has a form or a container that has been designed to hold life force. And from this, you can use this as a vessel for the nameless dead, which we'll be discussing in later episodes. You can use a skull for that if it's been properly cleansed. But the easiest and most accessible is an empty egg. You just blow everything out and cleanse the egg and simply state that it is to be a vessel for the nameless dead, and then you would begin working with it from there. Now, I hollowed this one out beforehand so I can show you what they look like. I'm going to try to show you how to do it, and we'll see how well that works. I succeeded that time, but I have about a 75% success rate with this, so we'll see how this goes. What you do is you take a tack or a hard piece of, like a needle, something like that, and you carefully, so you don't crack the whole egg, because this is sometimes where I mess up. Very carefully, let's try on the top first. Very carefully. Okay, there we go. Once you've got one hole in, it's usually easier to get the second one in. Very carefully. There we go. And this time, on the bottom, you're going to poke it a bunch of times. You're going to want a much larger hole on one side. But still not big enough to, you know, ruin the egg. Just nice big hole like that. And then here's the trick. Once you have it like this, you then take and go in there with the long stick and break the yolk up, because it's the yolk that's going to resist you. And then if you have like something that you want to put here, like a little syringe, you could actually just blow it that way, but you can just use your mouth and go like this. If anyone ever told you your grandmother sucked eggs, this might be what they meant. Maybe. Anyways, these vessels can be used for many different things. Once you've got that hollowed out, you can, like I said, use it as a vessel for the nameless dead, but you can also use this part to create many different blessing types of spells. You just hollow this out large enough to fit whatever you want in there. You put the sample of the person that you want to affect, a piece of their hair, a bit of fingernail in there, and then you would also put some seeds from things that would be conducive to the particular working, like perhaps some cilantro seeds, if you were trying to give someone a fresh start and good growth, which is another thing that'd be good with the egg. You put that in there, some fertilizer, and then you would go ahead and plant the egg into the ground and allow that growth to rise out of it and grow. And you actually, I've seen times where they don't put them in the ground. They actually just put the eggs in there, or the seeds in there with the egg and the bit of toenail or hair clippings or whatever, and allow it to grow out of the egg before planting it. That's probably going to be more effective, but I've seen it done both ways. Anyways, you can also put luck sigils, growth sigils, that type of things on the outside of the egg before you plant it, and allow it to grow inside. You can also use this in the opposite. You can use this hollowed egg, put someone's sample in there along with something that is going to burst again, preferably like, a little bit of like maybe some fake blood in the blood packet, or some war water actually would be even better. And you put that in there with their sample, draw their face on the outside, perhaps their sigil if you know it, anything that you have connected to them, and then, well, crack the egg. Perhaps with a large hammer, smash it, something like that. And that can be very effective. I have also heard of, birth control spells used in this way, where you would actually take an egg, not one that has been emptied, but one that is full, connect yourself to that egg, and then cover the egg in black wax, symbolically preventing it from being fertilized. I have actually seen males do this most often, so that connecting to the egg doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I suppose, but the idea is to keep your seed from being able to hit onto the egg, or vice versa. Now, I'm not saying one should use that as a guarantee, but it's a little bit of extra precaution. With things like that, I always suggest that we keep with the Western medicine as well as with the magical workings at the same time. I say the same thing with healing work. You take your medicine and do your energy work. Anyways, it's probably time for the Cascarilla. So, if you have a mortar and pestle, that is the easiest way to do that. And even though I do have a mortar and pestle, not everyone does, and I felt it would be better to demonstrate how to do it with a rolling pin, because almost everyone has a rolling pin. So, first you get the eggs into another thing. Actually, we're going to want this larger bowl still. Throw the membranes in. So then you're going to go through, and that membrane, now that it's boiled, should be real easy to get out of there. Any of it that doesn't come out now can be removed once the eggshell is dried. So you just take and remove all this membrane, put the membrane back in this other bowl here. And this will take a little bit of time. This will probably be the longest part of the video as far as me actually doing a thing, will be the removing the membranes here. So, while we're at that, we will talk about a few of the uses for the Cascarilla. And I'm probably pronouncing that horribly as well, but there are multiple uses for Cascarilla. It is a great base powder for any spell, really. Because once you have this down, once you have the egg powder, it doesn't have a whole lot of specified energy in itself other than the ability to hold life force. So it's a great starting product for just about any magical powder that you are working with. Besides that, it in and of itself can be used for protection as is. There are people that put it outside of the doorways to prevent spirits from entering the home. One can also use it as an alternative to salt for casting a magical circle. You can also use it, well, as I said, for your base powders. It works really well for any powder that you are going to be blowing like that. So, that can be used, well, there are some healing spells that are done that way, but the best thing about the powders when you're blowing them at someone is the theatrics of it. It is certainly a very effective way to let someone know that they have been cursed, is to walk up and blow a powder at them. Now, be very careful with that. Do not use any bioactive agents, or you have gotten yourself in a lot more trouble than you wanted to, because then you're doing more than cursing. That is assaulting someone. Do not do that. Certainly don't tell them I told you to. Anyways, let's go ahead and get all of the membrane in here, or out of there. Like I said, this part may take a while. You can kind of speed it up by cracking the eggshell. Let's see what I can do here to get it done quickly. Now, of course, once we are done, this will still be in mud, and it will need to be dried for just a little while. And there are two ways to go about that. You can just simply let it dry, and you have your classic Cascarilla, or you can very slowly heat it in the oven at your lowest temperature until it begins to burn. And then you have black Cascarilla. Black Cascarilla is often used for absorbing negative energies, that sort of thing. Anything where you're trying to keep something in. So often, what I have done with Cascarilla is, if I'm trying to bind something in, like anything that I might wrap in black fabric, I will also coat in the black Cascarilla to keep that energy in very well. Now, I do want to mention, just in case this episode goes over, that if we go over half an hour, then we will go on to episode 2 tomorrow. So if it suddenly cuts off, that's not the end of the episode. You will get the rest tomorrow, like we did last week. For those of you that are wondering what happened to the last of last week's episode, that's where it is. You just got to go back to the channel. I put it up the next day. Okay, so there are a few more things to say about Cascarilla, but while I'm remembering, I'm wondering if I'm in the way of those pans a little. There we are. Get out from under those. But anyways, let's talk a little bit more. I said that most of the stuff that we have worked with so far, it doesn't matter whether the egg is fertilized or not, or even alive. Like those of us that are in the States, when we buy our eggs, they have been washed and exposed to cold. So they are dead eggs. And for a lot of stuff, that's fine. For the egg cleanse, for making Cascarilla, making vessels, even the what would we say? Even for the prophylactics, I guess, spell that I discussed, it doesn't matter. It also wouldn't matter. You can use eggs in the opposite, rather than preventing fertility by covering the egg in black. You can use eggs, of course, for fertility spells if you are trying to have it. If you are trying to have a child, or even trying to influence who your child will be, to some extent, as in not who their personality will be. That is up to them. That's not the kind of thing we get to decide. But some influence on who winds up in there if you work on it soon enough. And hopefully that'll work out well for you. But one thing I do want to mention, some caveats there. If you bring a magical child, intentionally bring a magical child into this world, that is going to be a learning experience, not just for the child, but for you as well. So, if you do that kind of thing, do not do it willy-nilly or irresponsibly. Take that very seriously, just like you would with any child, actually, I suppose. No one should ever bring a child into this world irresponsibly. But that's not what this channel is about. We are not here for discussing that. We are a magic channel on sorcery. I'm getting a bit off track. So anyways, I don't know if I'm going to bother peeling all of these membranes. I think we've probably got enough here that you can see what we're doing. We've got membrane peeled off of all that's there. For instance, just demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and work with the little bit we've got, and I will do the rest of that later for my own use. So, if you don't have a mortar and pestle, you can get yourself some parchment paper or even some saran wrap. Saran wrap doesn't work quite as well. It kind of clings there. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But a Ziploc bag will also work. And what you do is you take the parchment paper, and you put it there, and then you just roll or pin over top. Over and over again. This being a little more stubborn than usual. That's essentially what you do. Uh-oh. This does work. Being a little stubborn with me this time for some reason. Oh my. Okay. Let's see what I can do to make that more cooperative. Because it doesn't seem to be working all that well. Normally it does. Okay. Fold it over a couple times. There we go. Apparently if you do it too thin, it doesn't work very well. You want to have quite a bit of it so that it can get mangled in on itself or whatever is going on there. So, despite what I said about, oh, you just need a little bit if you're going to do it quick, if you're using a rolling pin, apparently you need to have it doubled over some and on top of it some. You can't do a single layer or it's going to resist you. So, if you do it like that, hopefully that works a lot better. Let's see how we're doing. Oh my. Well, let's see. Just get it mangled up a little more. And actually it crumbled. It's just, there's still some membrane there. So like I said, any membrane that doesn't come off in the boiling will become exposed now. But you can't, if you're gonna boil it, you've got to do it before you crush it, or you're just gonna wind up with calcium water, essentially. Let's go ahead and get these little bit of membranes out of here. And then once we've gotten those out, we'll give it one more roll. And it should be fairly powdery by then. And the more, of course, the more you roll it, the better, the more powdery it's going to get. Lots of membrane in here still. Okay, so that's all the membrane that came out easily again at this point. Once it's a powder, all that membrane will be completely gone, obviously. Give it more centered, because that seems to work better. Oh yeah, I can really hear it crushing now. But it is less sludgy than I worried it was going to be. It's been a while since I've done it like this. Okay, so let's see where we're at now. Much better. There we go. And then you can just kind of roll it around in your hands. Get rid of as much of the membrane again as possible. Membrane. More. Okay, we're going to do that again. I will say, after having experienced both types a couple times now, that honestly it is much easier to do this in a mortar and pestle than it is with a rolling pin. But it is doable. This is how a lot of the kitchen witches do it did it back in the day. The first time I ever heard it described, this is how they said to do it. And the first time I ever did it was with a rolling pin. So, I never did get on to I didn't finish with the fertilized eggs. There is a whole lot of work being done and stuff you can find about people trying to make homunculuses by using live eggs that were not fertilized and then adding their own fertilization. I don't know about all that. It's an interesting way to go about things. But the fertilized live eggs, if you're going to use an egg to create a servitor or a golem of any type, that is the one you want to use. If you're trying to make anything where you're actually working with full life force, you need the live fertilized egg to work with. Otherwise, you don't have that spark that you need. So if you're doing a life force type spell with an egg, you can't just go to the grocery store and buy an egg. You need to go somewhere and get an egg from someone that is actually having the chickens lay the eggs there and has a rooster where to be getting fertilized, and that's the type that you want to use. Anyways, that is our last roll. Let's see how it went. That is powdery enough for most of the purposes that you use with it. Obviously that isn't going to blow it anyone easy, but the more you roll it, the more powdery it's going to get. But I think that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Oh, and smash that like button if you will. Anyways, until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal. Was that